second set of blocks is gonna be the issue that we're seeing, especially hard here in Tennessee. But we have two individuals that are going to speak, and then we have a small panel that's going to do some speaking as well. We have Kevin Ferguson and Charley Martinez that are from our managed program and also our e-commerce department that will be here presenting. They're going to be talking about ag loss and estate planning. This is part of their master program that they kind of cover and touch upon this. And again, I'm going to turn the floor over to Kevin Ferguson. Now, we will need to watch time closely on these two individuals. And then I know the panel speaker, Gordon Jones, will take forever. So at 3:30, everyone started waving so we can get to the lesson, right, Gordon?
Good. All right. Well, introduction from Dr. Strickler. Well, first of all, I would like to say as a native Tennessean and an alumni from UT, welcome to the University of Tennessee and Tennessee for this meeting. What Dr. Strick did share with you, I worked as an extension specialist here for nearly 38 years. And I've got 20 more days to talk to Jones. I announced my retirement. And I've got 20 more days from that standpoint. I'm going to be retiring at the end of June. But one of the things I'm not going to share with you a lot of cutting-edge research or anything like that. What's been mentioned is it's a hot topic in Tennessee right now. Transition planning and estate planning, succession planning, and I will tell you something that you need to be thinking about wherever you're located. We talked about having a panel here, and one of the ones that we mentioned for a panel was someone with a big family out in Virginia, and I know they're not any strangers to BIF. But to tell you how long I've been using this quote from Mr. James in it, he was the Sunbelt Expo Farmer of the Year from Virginia in 1998. Well, I've been using that quote for this long. Now, think about this quote. I firmly believe that adhering to tradition is the greatest obstacle to production agriculture. I see some folks shaking their heads. And you know, when we're out visiting with a farm, you often ask, why do you do it now? Or why do you do it this way? And what do you hear? We've always done it this way. Grandpa did it this way. Grandma did it this way. Well, when we talk about transition planning, we have a really proud and strong tradition within agriculture. We're always proud of this industry. We'll talk about the home place, the fifth generation farm, the century farm, 3 generations farming together. But historically, we do a really poor job in how we plan to transition that farm into the next generation. And it's something that we have been really focusing on here in Tennessee for the past few years. Last year, I probably gave 30-some presentations across the state on transition planning. Well, here's the challenge. When we talk about succession planning, it's not just estate planning. And when you look at all these subjects that appear, you know, some of them are related to estate planning, transition planning to the next generation or to another entity or another family, estate planning, tax planning, business planning. That's kind of all in that business realm. Retirement planning for the older generation. That needs to be in the planning process as well. Do you have a land use plan? Dr. Martinez has a section that sometimes when we teach, always focuses on management transfer and transition. And I would tell you that transition of assets is probably a lot easier than transitioning to management. It can be a much bigger challenge when we talk about management. Family goals. Does everyone have the same goal for that operation? And can that lead to stress among the family? How about labor and responsibility? Oh, how about an exit strategy in case something happens with the operation and we do need to exit this? Is there an exit strategy? So it's a lot more complicated. And you'll see this is the reason we say there needs to be a team to approach these. Well, when we talk about family goals, and how they may differ, I use this graph. You got multiple heirs in an operation, it's a cattle operation. Some of them see the picture on the left. We want to keep this farm in production or ranch in production for as long as we can, while other heirs may have what? The go on the right, how fast we can convert everything into cash. And I want my share. It takes a very special round baby to make that happen right. But what does all this do? It leads to stress among the families. Stress among the family adults. I will tell you that there's plenty of tools that we have available that if we can start this planning process much earlier, we can take care of some of those heirs that may be on the right or looking for cash. I will tell you one other thing that's causing a lot of challenges, and Dr. Swift mentioned it here in the state, is we have such pressure for people coming in buying farmland in Tennessee. We're having multi-generational wealth offered for farmland in Tennessee. I'll give you just one example that's been in the local paper on the farmer that I worked with since the 90s. They were in a swine operation, broke crop, they ventured off into, they added the county, notice I said the county, just purchased 65 acres and an older ranch style home from this farm family for $5.2 million to build one school on. To build one school on. I'll let you do the math, okay? But that's the offers that we've had in Tennessee. And it's causing stress among families too. I have a neighbor call me and he's got a 25-acre rectangular, long road frontage hayfield. The developers keep asking and raising the price. Okay? He came to me and he said, neither one of my children want to come back and farm. My wife said, let's sell it. But he looked and he nearly cried and said, that's my family farm. I want to keep it. And for some of you that are in surrounding states or whatever, you think, well, this is not affecting you all. This is Tennessee coming here, all the people coming here driving up the prices. We've got farmers in this state that are making sales because they're being offered that price, and they're going out west and investing in land there. So there increases the demand for you. The family goes. So the folks that I work with, I tell them, how can we encourage the folks to start making these plans and decisions much earlier? Can we encourage people to start making transition plans in their 30s, 40s, and 50s instead of waiting into their 70s and 80s? Okay? And when we look at data, 60% of adults do not have a will. Over 60% of adults in the U.S. do not even have a will. We have a program called Master Farm Manager here. Been in about 4 years now. Going into 4 years, we've had 2,500 that's completed the course. We asked them up front, how many of you have a transition plan for your farm operation? And pretty much it's exactly every year, about 16%. You think of the value that's represented with all the land and all the assets in this room, whether you're in Tennessee or someone else? If that's the case, only 15 or 16% have a plan for carrying it forward into the next generation. What other industry would be like that? Okay. And here's one that I just throw out. No matter what you do or do not do, one day your farm or ranch will transition. It's going to transition one day. And you can either have a will that will pass on assets, you can have a plan, a transition plan, or if not, it often is a sale and division of those assets. That's going to happen. One of those three things. Here's some things that I want to go back a lot of time and visit the wills. I ask people in Tennessee if we have a meeting, is a handwritten will legal in state Tennessee? A lot of times you will see people shake their head no. I'm seeing one or two shake their head, yes, yes, a handwritten will is legal in the state of Tennessee. You can contest two things, whether it's the signature of the individual, and if they were competent when they signed that. Okay? And the reason we encourage transition planning is to get rid of some of these things that are really risky. Notice I said down here, there's a lot of smart people here. What's the definition of farm equipment? Think about it. Give me the definition of farm equipment. And then we carry it a little step further. Give it the definition of farm equipment that can be used in court. True story. Got a call about a year ago. Dad's handwritten will said one of the four brothers got all of the farm equipment. It wasn't the brother that was currently working the farm. Those two brothers have now gotten attorneys and they're arguing over the definition of farm equipment. There's some greenhouses on this farm. Does the greenhouse fit the definition of farm equipment? One saying yes, one saying no. You can get attorneys on both sides. I corresponded back to them, said, I did look up and find some definitions that have been used in a court case. I called a couple of attorneys to get their opinion. I actually sent back and said, here's my suggestion, add up the value of the farm equipment that you're discussing and start subtracting attorney fees to see how quick you can complete the value of the farm equipment. But just from Dad's handwritten will, one of the attorneys that I called said, Herb, let me tell you the handwritten will that I'm in right now. Dad specified in his handwritten will that one brother could buy out the other brother and sister at time of his death and buy the farm. Guess what Dad also did? He specified the value. It's about 1/10 of the current value of the operation. And they're battling over it. There's not a lot of love in that family. But the attorney that I talked to that's representing the sister said, I don't think we're gonna be able to stop it. Because Dad, it's his signature, he was confident, and the son that's getting it said, Dad wanted to treat me right. Give me a good deal on this. So, values and situations change, you know, how often is something updated? I will tell you, anytime you have any kind of document, whether you've got a transition plan with a trust or anything else, or if you've got insurance, how often do you go back and review those life insurance policies? Again, true story, and I've got plenty of them for 38 years, working during COVID. And a COVID-related death on the business I was working with. Lady had been there 10 to 12 years. No children. While she was there, she had been divorced and remarried. The day I was there, we were going through looking at the insurance policy, the life insurance policy. Guess who the beneficiary was? Still on the life insurance policy that she had. Her first husband. Exactly. I'll just say things worked out, but the day that I was there was some heavy stress levels. Okay, so some of those things you may need to go back and look on. Where do you start? It's awkward for the kids to initiate this conversation. A lot of times you gotta have the parents on those to start it. You know, you may have a lender or financial advisor. You can have a transition team, is what we generally recommend. Here's the reason you need to have that transition team. You need to have a good estate planning attorney. You need to have, and that attorney will say you also need to have a good accountant, CPA, someone to do the finances as well. There may be an extension educator or communication specialist that help generate this discussion, because that's generally the big issue of why this is not done. We don't want to communicate about it. And ladies, I will tell you, this is the one typically that doesn't want to communicate. More than likely, from what we hear, it's the men that don't want to make this decision. I hear that over and over and over. Okay? Notice down the bottom, I said, this is not a kitchen table discussion, you need to get off site. Why? History, this has been the focal point, that kitchen table's been the focal point of that family. Good times, bad times, everything else. In my 38 years, yeah, I've had a lot of great mentors, but I've learned a lot from farmers. I was going through with working with this individual, it was him and his brother that was going through the transition deal. Parents had passed away, one brother wanted to stay on the farm, the other brother wanted his shed. I was working with a brother that wanted to stay on the farm, develop a farm plan, and I just happened to ask, I said, how are y'all progressing with this in terms of discussion? That's interesting, why you ask that? I said, well, I'm just interested. He said, well, brother, way, he comes over on a regular basis, and I said, well, we don't have that discussion, because he was in the house. He got dad's house, dad and mom's house. I said, we don't have that discussion. Well, that's interesting, why you ask that? He said, well, when brother comes over, we get in the car, we drive 2 or 3 miles down the road to the church we grew up in. I said, really? He said, yeah, I still go to church there, but when we need to have a discussion, we'll go in and we'll sit out in the churchyard. He said, I have keys, we'll go in. I said, why do you do that? He said, sitting in that churchyard, we tend to keep our emotions in check. And he said, we have a productive discussion. And I thought, wow, these folks will probably make it through that, and they do. This is the one thing I put up, and this is the reason you need more assistance, and no 2 farms are the same. Same way when we were talking to farm planning. These are all the tools that are available to help with estate planning. And you know, maybe the will, a lot of attorneys will say the first thing you need is power of attorney, but there's numerous kinds of trusts that are available. I'm working with different farm families now, they're looking at how can we limit and make sure there's no development here. Can we put in a limited trust to keep it in farming for 2 generations? Another is using, can we keep it in farming for 100 years before we can do something else with it? Conservation easements through perpetuity. Okay, that's a long time, but you'll have attorneys argue over that. But a lot of these things over here on the right are some types of investments that we can do to try to take care of those individuals that just want cash. Okay? This right here, you need to be paying attention to right now if you think there's an issue with it. It's something that I've dealt with for the last year. My mom's been in a nursing facility. She had a long-term care policy. Pays $100 a day. It doesn't cover half the cost right now. Cost is over $8,000 a month for long-term care. You know, and here's a couple of things in here that I'll talk about the younger generation. Sometimes I'll step on your toes. Working here does not necessarily qualify you to be the manager. Sometimes we say we need to go and work somewhere else and then come back to the operation. I've heard some people say go and work somewhere else and get a promotion and then come back and work on the current operation. It's something that's there. Don't protect the next generation from books. Most of the time when we see that, it's when there's financial issues. It's when there's financial problems and you've got someone in their 50s that have just realized we may be going into bankruptcy and I was never told anything about it. My good friend Dr. Dave Cole called me a few years ago. We do a lot of teaching together. And he said, I got some people on this next generation sing books. He was in the Midwest, I won't say where. He went through this whole deal, which we always talk about. And he said, this gentleman afterward came up to him and he said, so I need to show the boys the books, eh? The gentleman was in his 90s. The boys were in their 70s and late 60s and had never seen the books. It had been a successful road crop operation from that standpoint. Treat siblings and heirs fairly, not equally. How about that person that sibling that stayed on the farm and worked on the farm while the others left and went somewhere else? Do they deserve more or a larger share? Most planners will tell you, yes, either a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 share, but it is still determined by the parents. As someone said, and I was over at UT Martin making this presentation, someone that was in that position said, I got a lot of sweat equity in that operation. So what they're saying is they have built up the net worth of that operation, while the siblings that were away are then gonna get the same share that I did. But it's another thing to bring up in these. I will then end with a couple of resources. We've got a 120-page manual that is free online. If you go to Farmland Legacy or just search for Tennessee Farmland Legacy, all this book is available free there. It can be downloaded in a PDF, one chapter at a time. It talks about how to have that conversation between families. It talks about how to find a professional and work with a professional. So it's there. And there's other resources that we have. Iowa State's got a great list of resources. University of Minnesota has. There's also this publication, and if you will email me or contact me, there's an attorney that we work with or have worked with. She just recently retired. Here in Knoxville, she had 40-some years as a state planner. And she created this little pamphlet, and now it's a fillable PDF called What My Family Should Know. And even if you're not doing estate planning, something like this is very beneficial. You list where your information is regarding, whether it's insurance, bank accounts, anything else. This is a great resource to have. We send it out a lot. Next, online, we'll list Dr. Charley Martinez. As Dr. Strick mentioned, he's came to us from Texas A&M not too long ago. He's the director of the UT Center for Farm Management. And one of the things is he's been leading the cause on this farmland loss issue that we have in the state. We'll follow up with that.
You heard me pretty recently. So Kevin mentioned Martinez, director of the UT Center for Farm Management, also into veteran ag, resource economics department here at UT. The things I want to talk about, kind of dovetailing a little bit off what Kevin was talking about in terms of, we're in Tennessee and we have family transition and state planning happening, and it would be a problem that is happening here and now across the nation. I think kind of similar, I'm going to talk about Tennessee farmland conversion, and kind of using Tennessee as our example because we have data. But also, I think this problem is something that is creeping across the nation. Because where this all started was a year and a half ago, a little over a year and a half ago, one of our assistant commissioners came and talked to us. And was like, hey, there was a report that came out from American Farmland Trusts that are in Tennessee at that time before in the country when it came to the threat of farmland conversion compared to the nation. And since then, it moved up to third place, only behind Texas, which is #1, the most ranked state in North Carolina. And so I don't care if you're on 59 going from Houston on down to Victoria, Houston get a little bit closer every time you think about it, right? And so, I think this problem that I want to highlight here in Tennessee is kind of a microcosm because we are a small state compared to a Texas, for instance, but it's a problem that's creeping out across the nation. And so what we started was simply looking at the U.S. Census or the ag census. Has everyone in here filled out the ag census? But I don't see how much head shaking. We just got done doing it. So I'm also assuming that a lot of you probably did fill out the ag census. And so we started with the ag census and we kind of stopped in 2017 because I just asked y'all filled it out and the majority of y'all didn't really shake. I said yes or no. But in academia, the census used to be our gold standard. But the response rate has really gone like this over time because it's gotten more troublesome and more time consuming. But we're still gleaning some information out of the ag census. And so what we started was in the past 20 years, from 1997 to 2017, we were looking at ag and forestry land loss throughout Tennessee. And so throughout that time, we lost 1.1 million acres, which is the equivalent total space of the 4 counties that you see here in Tennessee. So for folks that are not from here, it's Carroll, Benton, Humphreys, and Houston, which is out in West Tennessee, big open area. But just in terms of total space, that's the equivalent of what we lost here in Tennessee. Another way of looking at that, though, is the rate of change. Between that time, we lost 55,601 acres per year, or 152 acres per day, or just in the hour of that, for instance, at Lake All City here, we were losing 6.3 acres per hour on average here in Tennessee. And so kind of thinking about it, though, what is the demographic change of that during that time frame? We went from an average acre farm size of 130.9 acres per farm up to 155 acres, just a little over 155 acres per farm here in Tennessee. But we still lost that 1.1 million acres of land that was being used in ag and forestry. But for us, in that question that originally started this coming off American Farmland Trust, the question became what's happened since 2017 because we didn't have U.S. Census or the ag census data to rely on at that point, but also as I mentioned, the response rate was getting lower and lower, so something that we really didn't want to hang our hat on. And so we actually used a data set that we were, some of us were actually using for FSA project that we had funded looking at crop yields and trying to come up with some estimation. But the data set is actually called Cropscape Data Layer. It comes from USDA and NAS, and what it does is it takes images of a county or a given area and aggregates up to estimates for not only county but the state in terms of different usage of land. And so, for sake of time, I kind of condensed it to where what we were looking at was ag and forestry in terms of pasture, hay, forestry, row crops. We saw all the acres from 2017 to 2022. But inside this data set, it's pretty unique, and we have this for the whole nation. So if this is a question that later on you have questions about, we have the data for every state and country from 2010 till now. The variable of develop is something that is very useful for us. And how it's defined is anything that is open space and developed. And so that could be housing, residential, industrial, things of that nature. And so for us, it gives us a glimpse at what the residential intensity is for a given area. And what we find here in Tennessee is that developed acres increased by 317,684 acres for an average of 63,537 acres per year. If we look at total change though out of ag and forestry land between 2017 and 2022, here in Tennessee we lost 132,941 acres, or an average of 86,588 acres per year since 2017. And so when I first moved here in the beginning in January 1 of 2020, it was a very different market compared to what it is now. There's a lot of people around of, you can sell a house for double what you got bought it for. COVID had not hit yet. There was no influx or movement of population across the nation. But we still started seeing and saw that intensity pick up. And I have this square here because the basis of this whole investigation was centered around the American Farmland Trust and where they had ranked us in 2022. This box that you're looking at here, kind of what they estimated moving forward, is actually double the acres count that they had. And so in my opinion, I think they were underestimating the intensity that we're seeing here in Tennessee. And the reason why is, if you think about it, most of y'all know Nashville, but then we have the hubs of Knoxville, we have the hubs of Memphis. But there's also things happening in our state that, it's our problem because it's in our state, but we have what's known as the global city economy here in West Tennessee, which is where Ford is building a facility that's going to make all the electric vehicles, and it's going to take up quite a bit of land out in West Tennessee. And so we know if that happens, where they're going to have over 1,300 employees, what happens around it? You got to start having houses that increase, right? We got to build more houses, we got to build more infrastructure, we got to build more roads, we got to build schools, we got to build parks. And I always made the joke that they're going to build the buses out there. Well, now they are building buses out there, and they found out last month. So there's a lot more development happening in West Tennessee. And in particular to us in Tennessee, West Tennessee is where our most fertile ground is. Where all of our cash crops, our row crops are being harvested and planted yearly. That's right on that delta on the Mississippi River. And so for us, that's not only are we losing land, but we're losing high quality valuable land. And so, we do like that data set Cropscape, but here's something I wanted to show y'all that is very unique to here in Tennessee because we have access to data that not a lot of other states have, and it kind of gives us a granular way of thinking that I think, if you have ability back in your home state, something that you can actually think about with your local officials in your counties. Parcel data. And so what I mean by that is everyone in here, regardless of where you are in the state or in the country, you actually have your parcel shape of land that you have to pay the property assessors for every year, right? Or property taxes. And they actually have that shape of that property by every little square little meter on Boundary, and that they have it either in a picture or they have it in one of the shape file. And so for us, we decided, hey, you know, we like this complicated, this aggregate data that they have, but what if we got our hands on the shape file for every county, in the state of Tennessee, for as long as, you know, historically, as long as we can go back for it. And so we actually started doing that, and we built up for the things like that you're looking at here. So this is Sumner County, which is just north of, for the folks that aren't around here, just north of Nashville County on the northeast side. But we had Sumner County here in 2011. Well, we're looking at all of what we would deem as agriforest land. If it's blue or red, it's deemed in ag production, but if it's in blue, it's called green belt. It's just a tax break or a tax break program that we have here, a policy or a law here in Tennessee that allows for rollback taxes and stuff of that nature. But then also 43 the green. If you look between 2011 and 2022, for instance, so 11 or 10 years or 11 years, you can see that we have these blotches of white start to get bigger, and we see the ag and forestry land start to become actually broken up even more. The white that you're looking at is industrial, commercial, residential, and because we have shape files, we can pinpoint to the decimal point how much acres are being converted and where it's going over time, instead of just having the aggregate of estimation of land. And so, currently we have the old data set. We're marching our way towards the 95 counties, 195 here in Tennessee. We have 93, and we're marching our way to being the only one because the state only gets 86 counties. There are 9 counties in our state that don't report to the state because of differences in terms of computer programming. So they don't have that. We've gone out and went met one for property assessors to get that data. So we're marching our way towards that. One of the reasons why we don't get data, or that, you know, that it's very hard to get the parcel data is, for instance, you're sitting in Knox County. Knox County is the bigger states or bigger counties in the state. In order to get access to that data, you have to pay $200,000 just to have access for 1 year worth of data. They sell that to the developers that come into the county and want to build residential housing, so they use it as a revenue stream for the county. And so we're getting this data for free, luckily, because of some other things that we have from a relationship standpoint. But we're doing it, we're building this data set, and we're gonna overlay the roads and streets. But what you're looking at here is what we have, from the publicly available, which if it's gray, we have most of them except for Shelby and Knox. We have the other counties, we cannot publicly show those, because those 9 counties are shaded are the ones that we are not allowed to publicly show because they give us the data, but we have it in-house so we can research it. You know, Kevin was mentioning and talking about prices of land that was going for around Middle Tennessee. Down in this area is where Chattanooga is, and that's another hub that we have. About a year and a half ago, there was 200 acres that sold $40,000 an acre. I mean, that's generational wealth by money that is occurring in one transaction. So it kind of makes sense why some people would sell out. But if you look, what we're seeing here in Tennessee is we have basically westward, progression here. East, as you work your way east through middle onto the west side, east and middle, where we've been hit the hardest with farmland conversion occurring and farmland and ag land going into residential, commercial, industrial land. But also over here, West Tennessee is where we have still a lot of land that has not been converted. I mentioned Louisville City. That city right here in this little area is popped right here in Haywood and Fayette County. That's where Louisville City is going to be going. Again, this is some of our most fertile land that these counties are going to have economic change happening over time with that occurring. And what I keep talking about, the crop productivity index or most fertile land, is based on the National Crop Productivity Index, which we have this also for the whole nation. And so if you're looking at this, you're looking at the state. If you're looking at red, it is the least productive soil that is out there. And as you work your way through the color grid here, the deeper the green, the most productive, or the highest productivity that soil can have in that area. And so these are provided by NRCS. And as you look here, we go from east to middle to west. We have a lot of red, we have some green and kind of that light green in here. Then we get back to reds and green until we get to west Tennessee, where we have a lot of that high productivity-based soil. But again, Louisville City is going right here. All these counties surrounding it, it's going to have economic spillage occurring. And so that's where we start thinking about what's the future look like here in Tennessee. To me, in my mind, it's no different than any of the other states, in terms of, progression of cities and kind of what they call sprawl and runaway sprawl occurring in other states. It's just a matter of, how close is it to you or not. And so what we've been doing is actually overlaying this layer, what we call a data layer, with the parcel and GIS shape files, and actually mapping how much and what quality of soil has been getting transferred out. And this is what it looks like. So this is Sumner County that showed early. This is in 2011 up through 2022. We had 7,654 ag parcels changed to residential parcels. In Sumner County, for instance, where you're seeing is the green is the high quality soil, red is the low quality, and there's no real pattern to it as you look at this county, for instance. This is all the parcels changing just from ag to residential. And if you actually took this, you can actually zoom in on this picture, and these little black boxes, you can actually see the parcels where they made it to become residential housing. And so that's what the stuff, that's kind of stuff that we've been doing with the data and kind of doing some economic modeling for our stakeholders here in the state, whether it be Farm Bureau, Tennessee Department of Agriculture, or our state officials. This is an example of what it looks like with the roads over it. So this is Gallatin, Westmoreland, and Portland. This is still Sumner County, where those white areas were occurring actually around these little cities that are in this county, for instance. And so for us, we're using this to analyze the impact on the economy from a local and state level, farming, agency analysis, reports, public facing dashboards. And we actually been creating one pages for folks in our state. So if you go to our website, you can download what we call a one pager. And it breaks down, for instance, this is Dickinson County from 2014 to 2023, and it maps all the acres of farm and ag land that exited out, where it's occurred in the county. And I told you we can actually monitor it now to a decimal point. We can actually monitor the agriculture, farm, or forest type parcel, and where it's going by parcel count and by acreage count. And so for us, this has been helpful for our local officials as people are starting to think about farmland conversion occurring. And so if you go to our website, you can actually find some dashboards in there. If you are in Tennessee, this is relevant only in Tennessee, but if you actually have questions about your state, just shoot me an email. We can actually give you and provide you data. Because we have other dashboards for the nation that we have tucked away. We don't put it public facing, but we do use it for research. And so just kind of give you the capping this whole little talk on farming conversion. What we've lost here in 1997 to 2017, sitting right here, which is 1.1 million acres. From 2017 to 2022, we lost a little over 415,000 acres. And with our projection from 2022 to 2027, in the next 5 years, we tend to lose the same amount of space. So what that means is these 4 counties that you're looking at here equal the same amount of space as the 4 green counties. Well, look at the time difference, 97, 2017, it took that one to lose 1.1 million, but now from 2017 to 2027, we've actually doubled in the rate of change here in Tennessee. And for us, that becomes a really big red flag. And our county officials here in Tennessee are trying to think about smart planning for the future, because at the end of the day, land is a limited resource. They're not making any more of it, right? And so once it goes out of production, it's probably never going to come back. 99.99% sure it's never going to go back to ag and forestry. And so efficient use of that moving forward is very critical. And I don't, as I said, we're using Tennessee as our model here, but I think that's true for every state in the country, especially in areas where we have our most agricultural production in the beef industry. That is Texas, that's the Cal State, where you're going to find a lot of the beef industry. And so I think, with those hubs around Texas, from Dallas to San Antonio, Dallas to Houston, Houston over to San Antonio, those areas have changed in a matter of 5 years compared with 20 years ago. And so with that, if you ever need to get a hold of me, if you want to send me some stuff, this is my information. If you're on Twitter, I'm still a traditionalist and call it Twitter. This is my handle. And so if you need anything, just give me a shout. I'm going to answer some questions here a little bit. But I think I'm going to pass back to Kevin. We're going to bring up some producers.
Thanks, Dr. Martinez. I'll just give one shout out to the data that Steve, like I mentioned, I'm from Rutherford County. And even though that's not on our public website, we share that with county officials here. But something the counties are looking at just next month, it will come before the planning commission there, that they're looking at a proposal of having the county limit that you gotta have 5 acres to build one home. To see if it will slow down the development pressure that's coming in, because we can't keep up with infrastructure. And as I mentioned, school, we can't build the schools fast to do that. One of the things that was mentioned earlier, we hope to have maybe some more panelists on, was some producer panelists. I mentioned the minutes that were earlier, and I should have said, you know, that quote was from '98, and I'm sure their numbers have changed dramatically since then. But one family that we talked about, a lot of you are familiar with Dr. Gordon Jones, that's involved here. Dr. Gordon's in the back, and his daughter-in-law up here, Sarah Jones. And we asked them to kind of go through some discussion about what they had gone through. And I will say, I go way back to this family. I can remember in the '70s when I was practicing livestock judging. This is where we would go to practice swine livestock judging. And Dr. Gordon's dad, I can still remember him leaned up on the fence post, quoting the lineage of this Duroc gilt for generations. So this family has been involved in the farming industry for generations. I'll turn it over to Sarah, and then make some comments about how they go through and they talk about this transition plan. And Dr. Jones, you're welcome to kind of make any other comments as well. Okay, Sarah?
I didn't realize I was gonna take the floor as such, but, thank you all for coming to Tennessee and being here with us today. Sarah Jones, Red Hill Farms, and, we actually, are on the Kentucky-Tennessee line. So we farm in 2 states, Kentucky and Tennessee, and so that complicates things a little bit when you start talking about, transitioning and family planning. We are fortunate. My husband has one sister who is a doctor in Ann Arbor, Michigan. My father-in-law, Gordon Jones, is an only child. His father was an only child. And so for their farm, it's been relatively simple, for that transition. On my side, my farm, my family farm, I have siblings, but we have purchased. My husband and I have purchased the farm where I grew up. We had to purchase it. We have a 17-year-old son who will be the 7th generation on both families' farms. And so it goes back to tradition, right? It goes back to the family heritage and how important it is to keep that land in our family. A couple of comments that I guess that I would like to make, the experiences that I have had a couple of experiences that I actually had the last couple of days. How many in this room, if you will, how many have a life insurance policy? Maybe half, maybe less than half. So important, especially if you're in agriculture, or if you have the possibility of helping spread out some of that, the wealth of the land among siblings. But yesterday, a close family friend in the state of Ohio, 38 years old, was killed in a farming accident in the neighborhood with 3 young children. Are you prepared for this? And so I'm not sure if that family was prepared or not, but it's something to take very seriously. Regardless of your age, we think we're invincible as we're young, but we're not, because agriculture, it's a very dangerous occupation. The second thing I'll say is a couple who are actually in their 80s, family friends that we actually visited over the weekend, were telling me that they did not even have wills. And so my husband and I had been married 21 years. We started with our wills when we were pregnant with our son. So we developed our wills then, including power of attorneys. And then we recently upgraded those, and we also now have a trust. So even though we're young, even though we hope that we live a long, long time, we have, and even though we just have one side, we actually have our property in trust, so. About a little over 1,000 acres, so.
All right, cool. Once again, I'd like to thank all of them for coming to Tennessee. We appreciate having this event in Tennessee. It's the first time it's ever been in high school in Tennessee, and it was in Nashville like 25 years ago. This leads, I'm just going to relate a little bit, if I can, to some of the things we've heard already. Kevin, I heard you discuss one thing. You mentioned this thing of transition of management. My experience is 40 years teaching at Western Kentucky University and seeing many, many students go through that program and then go back to the farm. And I would relate to you what I've learned and observed, I think is so important. The most successful transitions has occurred when the older generation quickly turned management decisions over to the younger generations. I think this is the biggest problem I've observed during my entire career, is seeing the older generation reluctant to share, and they may make mistakes, but they really need to become involved in helping to make decisions at a very young age. And Sarah, I appreciate what she said a few minutes ago, but with the 17-year-old, he has as much to do with making decisions of which foods we use, which cows we flush, as anybody in operation. It's not one person do it all. None of us know as much. In fact, the 17-year-old grandson knows more about the pedigrees and the genetic values on the cattle than anyone else on the group. So we rely on him. The three of us sit and talk about decisions. We have call on tide more than any one of the others of us, because he understands that, knows that. So he already owns cattle, he owns sheep, he owns sows, so he already feels like he's a part of the operation. He is part of the operation. And that's what I like to see, and that's the biggest problem that I've observed over the years. Now, what Sarah said earlier, our family is unique in how we transition. My great-great-grandmother, that's right, yeah, great-great-grandmother purchased our whole farm during just after the Civil War. Her husband was in the Civil War. He fought for the Union. Proud to say. But he was injured, spent 6 months in the hospital in Columbus, Indiana, and I guess he must have got some fun. He used that fund to buy that whole farm. But then she had a son and a daughter. The daughter had no children, and so the farm was given to my great-grandfather. And then my grandfather was an only son, then my father was an only son, then I'm an only child. But I was not on the farm. But when our son decided he wanted to go back to the farm, it's kind of script generation thing. He graduated on Oklahoma State and immediately came back to the farm and took over the pig farm. And then we expanded to cattle, like several other things, lots of tobacco. But some very important things occurred when our son and Sarah took over the farm. My wife and I felt like we did have a daughter who's on medical school faculty at the University of Michigan. But she and her husband were well taken care of. I didn't have very good careers. But so we formed a trust so that we could transition the farm to the son, to Martin, Sarah, their family, and we hope to compensate her daughter in a comfortable manner as she needs to be. So that was very, very important. But at the same time, we also, Debbie, we talked about long-term care insurance. At that very same time, we purchased long-term care insurance. I hope we don't ever need that, but I think several things have been mentioned here today that are very important. That's looking kind of important in our family. And the trust, we try to keep our trust updated. We make one, just let it be, but it's better to kind of continue to update that thing. You see change. Well, changes all those sorts of things. So these are a few things that I wanted to share with you. And talking about treating siblings fairly, and that's just, and you mentioned that, Kevin, I like that. And of course, we all want to do that. That should be what we all want to treat everybody fairly, and everybody feel good about that. And I think if we have an arrangement whereby both children and their families will feel good about it. So I just hope that is the situation. But we did give that lots of thought. When Mark, Sarah took over the farm, and they, and that farm is in Russell. But to expand that operation, they had to purchase their own land, when they purchased her parents' farm, to be a part of this operation. And Sarah, so you did, but you had to purchase that land at a less than market price, so that's part of it too. We'll be glad to take any questions you might have. I just want to share a few little things. I really appreciate the discussion we've had. I thought Kevin did an awesome job of describing how the complexity of transition and how important it is to the plan.
Any questions? I know this is something that a lot of times is, a lot of times we don't have a lot of questions about because it's kind of a private thing. Yes, sir.
Not so much of a question, but just to reiterate everything you're saying, because my mother had gone through this and we did a trust. But also, she did a healthcare directory, which I think is one of the most important things to do, that they have what their wishes are filled out. The other thing that mother did was very good, very thorough. So what do you do for spouses if one of your siblings or somebody passes away? To give you an example, my mother set it out that their spouse would receive X amount of dollars over an X period of time. This conference.
Very good. And there's lots of those things that are mentioned, not only in that handout that I mentioned, what my family should know, but also in that book that's available online. And you know, there's lots of things we talked about. We didn't talk about a will. You may have a will, but then how often do you go back and look at that will and update it? Again, true story, my wife, got the call, her 56-year-old cousin died of a heart attack. No children, never married, but had a will. Okay, we went and found the will. It was from the late 90s. It named his 86-year-old mother as the executors of the estate. And she needed a lot of help. But they didn't know where any kind of insurance was located, anything like that. And I will say, you know, some of the other things that we mentioned, Dr. Jones mentioned an only child. I happen to be an only child. I'm married to an only child, and we have an only child. But my dad was one of 14. 10 boys and 4 girls. There was no estate plan for that operation. Okay. Dr. Street, we're out of time. Any other questions?